today at this beautiful lake. It's actually an old gravel pit, an old gravel workings at Meadowlands. It really is a lovely lake, but it's more like an old reservoir, you know, where you've got these, it's fairly steeply sloping sides, and I've done a rough plumb up, and at sort of 11 metres out, it's quite deep. It's like 12 foot deep, and I'm not sure where the fish are going to be today, but I mean, it's early April. It might be a bit difficult, but I'm going to target big fish, look for big fish. And I mean, we've got a reasonable weather today, you know, no frost last night, it's quite good, sun shining. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to catch some big fish. Now with fishing, sometimes you come to a new venue and you're not sure exactly how the day's going to pan out, you know, how the fish are going to respond. Usually, now I've made up 4 rigs today, but usually it'll be just one rig that'll be the right one, you know, the bagging one. So I've made up 3 or 4, and I'm going to work from them just to see what response I'm going to get from the fish. Now this rig, I've set this up for fishing at about 11 metres. As I said, I've already roughly plumbed up. So 11 metres, it's 12 foot deep, it's quite deep. But I've put a fairly light rig up. Sometimes when you start to fish, you know, beginner session, it's a little bit difficult. So you need a lighter rig, lighter tackle. And then as the session wears on, some bigger fish move in, and then you need your heavier rig. So this is my sort of a light rig, but I've got a chance of still getting out a big fish on this rig. Still got a chance of, say, landing a 6 or 7 pound carp. What I've done, I've got quite a small hook, an 18, and I intend to fish maggot on that, probably 2 maggots. And a hook length of 0.12 millimetre, which is probably about 3 pound breaking strain. 10-inch hook length, and then a 4-turn water knot. You can hardly see the knot. It's so neat and tidy. Just a small 4-turn water knot there, trimmed off nice and neatly. And then I've got quite a big float because it's 12 foot deep, but not a massive float because this is a light rig. I've put a gram on this one. I've got 3 number 10 shots. 1, 2, 3, equally spaced just above that knot, sort of 2-3 inches apart. And then a little bit further up, I've got an olivet, a brass olivet. Remember that we can't use tungsten olivets. We can use tungsten, but we can't use lead olivets. So brass or tungsten are the alternatives. And that's just a Drennan Polemaster with 2 little clips, tags on it, and it's locked in position with some actual sleeving there, some sort of semi-hard sleeving, but it will still move. You can still pull it along the line. Now the main line is 0.15. It's quite strong. It's sort of about 5 pounds. Say around about 5 pounds. So if I need to step up on the hook length, I can. I've got a good strong main line there. And then up to the float itself, which is, and it's a fair way away. It's a 1 gram. Let's have a look at it here. It's called a quad. It's a Drennan float. It's got a wire stem, wire for stability. When you're fishing long pole, short line, wire is usually always the best option. And then it's got an interchangeable tip. I can use black or red today, it doesn't really matter, but I've got a black one on this rig. But I can pull it out and change it if the light changes. And then up to the elastic. And the elastic I've got, through here I've got some white Hydra elastic. It's sort of equivalent to, say, a number 8 elastic, but it's good for when you're using light rigs. It will stretch and stretch and stretch, and this is what I say, I've got a chance of landing a big fish on this elastic. And a Stoneflow connector, a large Stoneflow Preston Carp connector there. And the end of the pole, right on the end of the pole, I've got a bush. Quite a big bush because this is fairly thick elastic. I've got a sort of a Drennan bull-nosed PTFE bush, so this elastic will slide very, very easily over that bush. Even though it might take a long while, I'm still quite likely to land a big fish. Now the main target today is going to be big fish, so I've selected a ground bait that's going to suit these big fish. Silly Bait Black. Now that's got a lot of sort of fish mealy flavouring, which is always very, very good for large fish. I've selected black because it's still fairly cold, the fish are not really that active, and they might steer clear of the ground bait if it's too light. But so I've selected a black, silly bait black. I've also got a secret additive today, something which I'm working on at the moment, and it's going to be packaged in the Van den Eyne Clubman range. You've got absolutely no name on there. It's all it is. It's top secret, but it's one that we're developing and we've found already has been good for big fish. So it's a special carp with a fantastic fish mealy smell. Some of that's going in. With fishing 2 lines today, I'm going to mix up a fair bit. I'm going to mix up sort of almost 2.5 kilo of ground bait, so it's a reasonable amount. So there's our dark contents. Stir them really well, get those mixed in together really well. And then, just in case these fish need some extra flavourings, and I'm a great one, I love flavours. The thing about flavours is, what you have to look at is carp anglers, you know, the big fish carp anglers. They always use flavours, you know, they vary their flavours to catch big fish. So you know, and really, they really experiment with flavours, so you know they must work. Smells always work for fish, and it's just different flavours for different fish. And this one, which is called a liquid green lip mussel, right, is a brilliant one for carp and tench. And add that to the water, just add that to your water. I've got a 2-pint container of water. Add that to the water before you mix it into the mix. So get the flavour into the water, let that distribute. A reasonable amount I've put in there, sort of 1/4 of a pot, but it'll last you a fair few outings. Just mix that in. Lovely, I could almost drink that myself. Well, not quite, but there you are. And then add this water very carefully. It's quite a difficult one to mix up this, because it's a fairly fine-ish mix. Fairly fine-ish dark mix, which has got a lot of fish mealy sort of, so it's difficult. It's not like a pure breadcrumb. Pure brown crumb's always easy to mix, but these sort of very, very fine, high fish meal content ground baits always are more difficult to mix up. So what I've done, I'm going to put some water with that, leave it, let it dry. Always, this is the first job, mix this up first, let it dry out, add a bit more water to it, and just wait until you get exactly the right texture. So we'll just leave that for a few seconds, let that water absorb into there, and then come back to it a little bit later. Now it's always important to remove these larger lumps, the bits that most of the water hits, just so that you get that real even texture. So you need to riddle, just a normal maggot riddle mesh. You need to just riddle, and you find when you riddle you'll get those dry pieces going through. And it looked all right in there, but look at all these lumps on top, look at all these. These are the ones that have taken more moisture. So just, if you rub your hands gently on those, right, these are the wetter parts, get those to go through. There's no really big lumps in this ground bait, this is just an attractor. It's not really a feeder, it's just to attract the fish. It's early in the year, so we need to just attract the fish into the swim. It's a fairly deep reservoir. I want to get some ground bait down, so all that I've riddled there last is wet, so you mix those two together. Some wetter pieces with the drier pieces, and then you just get this beautiful texture of ground bait. It feels just completely different, and it's so important to do it. You know, you must always riddle the ground bait, then just a little squeeze like that. I'm going to put that in with a pole cup, but that will go straight to the bottom. Now, as I said earlier, I've roughly plumbed up, and there's a real slope on this. If you see as I lower this float in, you'll see now, you see when it hits the bottom, sort of there, it's just about hit the bottom now. When you're plumbing up, make sure that your plumber is dead under your float. Don't swing it out and then sort of just lift your float well out of the water and lower it in slowly so you can explore there. You see that's just hit now, bang. See the line's just gone slack there, and it's probably 2 inches. If I pull back half a metre with this pole, you'll see the slope. I'll pull back sort of half a metre. Now look at that, look, bang. See the difference? It's something like, probably over that half a metre, it's come up 7 or 8 inches. Then as you go further out, look, you'll see as you work down the slope. So when you get this sort of situation, it's quite difficult to feed. And what I'm going to do today is feed with a pole cup so I get complete accuracy. If you start throwing ground bait on these slopes, it can go anywhere and start to roll downhill, so you've got to be very, very careful. But that there I think is about right. It's 2 or 3 inches over depth. I might alter it a little bit later on, but that's roughly the depth. If I go past a bit, I'll be off bottom. If I come in a bit closer, I'll be closer on bottom. So I think that's just about right, but make sure all the time that you're fishing just on bottom to begin with. And then, you know, in summer when it gets really warm, probably in that 12 foot of water, you will probably catch fish 3 foot deep in this situation, but I don't think we will today, and I haven't set any rigs up in case we do, because I'm pretty sure we won't. It's still a little bit too cold yet. And I'm going to plumb now also that inside line. I want to fish another line. It's 12 foot deep out there. I want to try a close line. The fish may be closer in today. So you have to work out all sorts of different situations just to see what's going to be the best. And I've done the same with that one. I've roughly worked out by looking earlier on, you know, how deep it is at 6 metres. I've got it roughly figured, but it's still sloping away all the time. I'll just show you the slope there, if I can. It's just, and it's identical to the other one. Brilliant little plummets, these. Just spring-loaded. Fantastic little things. And on this, so this is sort of like a 6 metre line. I'm fishing out much lesser distance. That's probably where the fish might be today, I don't know. It's fairly close in, and I'm guessing it's about 8 foot deep there. But once again, lower it in. Check the depth, you can see there. If I go a little bit more forward, you'll see how the variation, just by a tiny little bit, going out further. I think that's about right. It's almost a float over depth, and I think that'll be a good start for us today. So that's the 2 lines basically plumbed up, almost say a float 2 or 3 inches, 4 inches over depth, and then I'll shuffle it about, depending on what response I'm getting from the fish. Now the main feed today is going to be in ground bait. I'm going to loose feed over the top, but in this deep water I think there are some silverfish here, so I think it's important to get some feed on the bottom. So I'm mixing some casters, right, in the ground bait, but quite a rich mix to get some gear down. A little bit of sweet corn as well, just in case, a few grains of sweet corn. And a good tip when you're actually mixing this ground bait on and you're going to cup it in on a slope, don't make it a round ball, make it a ball like that. You know, one that you sort of grip in one hand and throw, because all these rough edges on this slope, ground bait can roll, but if you make it like that, it will lodge on little bits and pieces. So just squeeze your ground bait, just naturally, don't worry about making a dead round ball. And I'm probably going to feed about 4 of these on each line. So I'm going to mix up sort of 8 of these. Just needs one good squeeze, that's all. One good solid squeeze. Few more casters. I'm putting plenty of casters in, getting some gear. There are some big fish in this lake. We've got to get them feeding. You have to feed them. Otherwise they won't hang about. Look at that, look, an odd lump of sweet corn, odd grain of sweet corn in there. Just mix it up. Good, just a good firm grip with this ground bait. It is a sort of a reasonably sticky-ish mix. It will squeeze together. Look at all those casters, look, sticking out there. Loads solid. There you are, one more. So we've got 4 balls on each line, and then I will top up very, very regularly. That's why I've mixed up a fair bit of stuff. I know there's plenty of silverfish going to feed. If I loose feed in this deep water, they'll probably intercept everything that goes. But these heavy balls will drop to the bottom. That's where I'm going to be fishing for the big fish. Now I'm feeding with a pole cup today, and it is an absolutely brilliant way of getting any sort of pellet feed or ground bait in the exact location that you want it. Just screws onto the end of the pole there. You just drop your ground bait into it, plump like that, and then you can feed it out. What I'm going to do actually is while I'm feeding, I'm just going to sprinkle a few maggots on there that trickle down through the water. A lot of people don't do this. Just sprinkle a few maggots in your cup. When you cup in, they'll trickle down through the water. Won't do any harm at all to spark the fish off. And then this is a short line. This is sort of 6 or 7 metre line that I'm fishing. Remember to pick a marker on the far bank so that you're going in at the same place every time. Hold the pole in the position that you're going to fish with it. Right, just get it over the water, and then you can drop that in on the exact location that you're going to be fishing. Bomb. And a few maggots in on top there, just as an extra attractor. A little bit of cloud coming off that, but the main bulk has gone down. Now I'm going to put 4 of those in, 1, 2, 3, 4, just to get a little bit of a bed down. That's the 4 balls put in on the short line. Now I'm going out on 11 metres, 11.5 metres. Same thing, a few maggots in the cup on top of the ball of ground bait, just to trickle down. It's 12 foot deep, just to trickle down through that 12 foot of water in just the hope of attracting some fish, just to get them started. First of all, you know, when you feed, fish are always a little bit suspicious. You know, until they start to get a sort of a taster of what's happening. They're always a bit suspicious. I've got picked the marker on the far bank, got it in, maggots and everything, dead exactly where I'm going to fish. I know exactly where I'm going to fish each time. So I'm going to do that, whiz that in, and do that sort of 4 times again, just to get some ground bait in there, and then gradually top up as the day goes on. Oh, that was good. I just sort of started on that long line, just a quick look, but it's so warm I suspected that the fish may be in close. I've just gone in with double maggot over that initial feed, you know, on that 6 metre line, just gone in with double maggot and into a fish straight away. Not a massive fish, but well, reasonable quality. I guess it's a roach or it is a beautiful roach. Only catches big fish, this ground bait. So it really is. Looks like a 10-ounce roach. It's taken the bait. Well, that's a great start. And this is what usually happens in a session. You know, when you start fishing, carp are always a bit slower to come, and initially you'll catch some silverfish. And this is a particularly lovely roach, probably about 10 ounces, double maggot, still sticking out of its mouth, look. Beautiful dumpy fish. A great start to the session. Wonder if there's any more out there. Boat's gone again. This session started off really well. Now that elastic, I've only got a lightish hook length on there, as I explained earlier, it's an 012, but look at that elastic out there. That is this new Hydra elastic. It really does stretch. I wonder what this is. I didn't expect to be catching goodish fish so quickly. This feels like a nice, is it a tench? Do you know what, it's great when you start fishing somewhere where you haven't fished. I fished here once before, but I haven't fished here for ages. And you just sort of, you wonder what you're going to catch, you know, you're never sure. And it's just great when you get that first fish on, the first good fish. This is. And that elastic is really doing its job. I've got a light hook length. This is a goodish fish, goodish stamp fish. I'm guessing a tench. Guessing a tench, but I might be wrong. Oh, it's a tench. Just what we came to catch today. Look at that. It's only about £2, but so early on in the session, straight on that ground bait. That new formula really is working. Beautiful little tench. Lovely golden colour. How about that? And tench they are, they nickname them bars of soap. You really have to hold them hard, but look. Just, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. Doing a John Wilson here laughing like that. Look at that. Beautiful fish, but you can't hardly hold them. They're a job to hold for camera. But that's what we've come to catch today. So let's have a look on that longer line to see if the fish are in the deeper water. I've fed it, but I haven't fished it for a while. I mean, I started on it and the fish obviously weren't there. But this may be where there could be a big carp out there on that stuff. I've been loose feeding a few casters over the top. What you actually do when you loose feed in 12 foot of water, when there's a lot of silverfish, which there are here, there's not much that gets to the bottom. But what it does draw fish into your peg. You know, feeding fish will attract other fish. So I'm loose feeding a few casters on that long line. And even when I'm fishing the short line, I still keep feeding out there on that longer, on that 11.5, 12 metre line. And the same when I'm fishing out there, I will still keep loose feeding on this 6, 7 metre line. So I'm right now on top of the ground bait that I cupped in earlier. Just see if, oh, there was a bite on that deep water and I missed it. You know what, I was just a bit too excited, I think. I just felt the fish, you know, as I struck, I just bumped the fish. So there are some out in the deep water. Let's have another look out there. Now what I've done is I'm actually putting that float in dead above where I've cupped that ground bait. But as I said, the actual lake itself, it's towing back to the left. And when this loose feed goes in, it's there to actually draw fish into your peg. Get fish excited, get them feeding, and the stuff that you've cupped in is on the bottom where you're fishing. And hopefully you miss most of those silver fish then, and you just, hopefully it's there on the bottom waiting for the larger fish. But that's pretty deep there. Yeah, that must be at least 12 foot of water there. Ideal winter fishing, of course. But this time of year, the fish are just starting to creep up this shelf. Loose feeding the inside line as well, keeping both swims going. You never know which swim is actually going to produce, so it's usually always one that ends up being the master, the one where you're going to really catch your best weight on, but you've got to do both just to find out. And although I had that bite on that line straight away, it hasn't gone this time. So it just may have been one good fish and I may have scared it. Just, if you bump a fish, in other words, I felt that fish when I struck, then that will be scared, that will be long gone, and it might take one or two of its friends with it as well as it races off. So it's not a good thing to bump fish, but I found today you've got to be pretty sharp on these bites, particularly as I'm fishing maggot. And this time you see it hasn't gone. And I'm getting more indications on that small line, so don't waste too much time. I'm just a little bit longer out there, it hasn't gone. I'm going to come back in and go back on that shorter line again just to see. They will come there in the end, but it's just a matter of how long it takes. They tend to want to be in the shallower water at the moment. I've caught a few fish on this 6.5 metre line. Let's just have a look at the rig I'm using. Now, because it's still early and I feel that it could be difficult, I'm using almost the same hook as I was using out on that longer line, an 18 Tubertini 808. It's a very, very fine wire hook. Barbless, of course. Barbless, you must use barbless on these managed fisheries. But it's a fairly light hook, but it's still very, very strong. I'll still be able to land a biggish carp on it. Then I've got 012 hook length, which is about £3, just under. I've got a 4-turn water knot, 10-inch hook length, that's about standard, 10-inch hook length. And then I've got 2 number 10 shots, one just above the knot there, and then just 3 inches above that I've got another number 10 shot. Now the main line is 015, as I had earlier, just in case I want to step up again. So the main line is still fairly strong because we could catch some big carp later. And then going up further, I've got a small 0.5 gram Olivet. It's only, on this shorter line, it's only 8 foot deep, so you can fish with a lighter float. So I've got a 0.5 gram Drennan Polemaster Olivet. It's got 2 little tags there, just hold it in position. But you can slide that easy without damaging the line. So, but it's fixed securely, but if you want to move it, you can. Then going up to the float, I've got the same float on every rig today. I love these floats for this sort of fishing. It's got a nice thick top, this interchangeable top that I can pull out. It's called a quad. It's got a wire stem there for stability. And then going up to the elastic, this is this new Hydro elastic, and this one is a sort of equivalent to a number 6. But it is very, very supple. You know, I landed a couple of big tench on this rig, and it handled it very, very well, very easily with this small hook. Just stops bumping the fish, and a small connector there as well. So that really completes the tackle for the inside line for when it's difficult. Conditions are changing all the time today. There's a bit of cloud about, the sun's in and out, but I'm still keeping on with this shorter line, I think, at the moment. 2 maggots on the hook, although I am starting to get pestered by small fish. So if it continues, then I'm going to have to change the bait. You know, I've had a period now where I've had sort of 5 or 6 of those roach, which I don't really want today. I'm hoping that the bigger fish are going to move in and push them out. It'll probably be time to feed again with the pole cup in a minute to get something down. See, even in 8 foot of water, when you're loose feeding, it attracts silverfish in your peg, apart from other fish. And the only bait that you can get to the bottom then is ground bait and the pole cup. Let's just have another look out there to see if any big fish have arrived yet. There's certainly big fish about, because I'm getting plenty of sort of little twitches and signs and indications, but they're just not yet taking it. Now remember, this feeding, this loose feed, is to draw fish in. 8 foot deep, it'll take a fair while to get down there. And as the day wears on, you can rest assured that probably nothing gets to the bottom at all. So it is essential then to start cupping in. Oh, that float went straight away that time. I wasn't even looking, I was just filling the pouch up to feed out, and the float had buried. Might have been a little roach, but you never know. It also could be a big tench. But there's lots of activity, you know, lots of fish where I'm loose feeding. I'm fishing over that ground bait now, loose feeding as well. And there's signs all the time that there's fish there. It's just a matter of, are there too many silverfish there? And are they getting in the way of the tench? All the time, little tiny knocks on the float, which tell you there's fish in the area. Sometimes, of course, a float moving can be the fins of a big fish. We call this line bites. And you try not to hit those, you try to distinguish those between, but you can't always tell. Sometimes a big fish going at speed there, the float just went a little bit then, and we're into a big fish. Just a matter always of time. This is a good fish. That elastic's really working well. Lovely, look at that, real quality. Lovely, lovely to feel. See, that's the beauty of this hydro elastic. That will stretch and stretch and stretch. I've only got a fairly light bottom on there, but I can probably guarantee getting this fish in. Just unship steadily. No need to rush anything. The elastic's doing all the work. Let the elastic do the work. This is a good, powerful fish. I've no idea what it is. Didn't fly off hard. If it had been a carp, it would have probably gone off really fast. But having said that, sometimes big carp, there, look, I've gone and unshipped, and I've got to put some joints back on again, because this fish is actually getting stronger. Now look at that elastic, really working, nice soft elastic. Terrific fight from this fish, but I don't know what it is, no idea. And that really is the fascination of fishing, isn't it? What is it? You know, when that float goes, what is the fish? You just don't know, do you? That's why I love fishing. You just never know what's under that water, what's going to take your bait next, what you're going to catch. Now what I've done this time, because it's a big fish, I've actually left an extra joint on to land it. Normally this would be my length of line there, but I've left this other joint on to compensate for that elastic, so that then I can play this fish. And this really is leading me a merry dance. I think it's just woken up. It probably might be not a big carp, but a reasonable carp, I should think. But he's just getting excited now. And there's something like probably 5 meters of elastic out there. Terrific fight. This is the fun. This is a real pleasure of fishing. Now this elastic, because I've got this elastic on, it's fairly soft, so you can't put too much pressure on the fish, but it does enable you to fish with light gear. And I'm really now starting to put some pressure on this fish, but that's not interested. Probably this is why it went a bit quiet early. You know, I said there was little dibs and bobs and just tiny bites. That's probably why. And I'm just now eager for the first glimpse of this fish. What is it? Looking for it to swirl. It looks like a carp. I didn't think it was a carp the way it swirled off, but it is now, I realise. This is another one of the fish. We've had tension. This is another one of the fish that we've come to catch on the pole today. Terrific. What a fight though. This is why people love carp fishing. They put up such a fight. And this fish is so big, I've got to now put 2 joints on. He's still flying around. It's got to be at least a 5 or 6 pound fish, this, on light gear. If I'd have been fishing heavy elastic, I probably would have lost this fish. There it is, right on the top. Look at that beautiful fish, fighting. Just gonna whiz that net under it if I can. Once it's seen the net, it doesn't want to go in it. What a lovely fish. Oh, do you know, just one fish like that makes it all worthwhile. Beautiful carp. Beautiful mirror. But what a wild fish. What a wild fish. I'm not so sure it is a mirror carp. It's just a strange looking fish to me. It's got uneven scales, but it's probably, I don't know, it's just a beautiful fish. Let's just take that hook out and show it to camera. Show the fish to camera. It's just a fantastic, really, really wild looking fish. Now look, just take a look at that. 4 or 5 pounds, but a beauty. Really is a beauty. Look at those lovely tinged, orange tinged fins. But did it fight? What a struggle. I think I'm more tired than that is. Terrific fish. I'll slip it in the net, see if there's another one out there. Now I need to feed again. After a sort of a time of playing a fish, you need to get some more bait in. And loose feeding's not enough now. You know, none of that loose feed's getting to the bottom, so you need to keep topping up with your pole cup and ground bait, just to get something down there to get them big fish interested and to keep them down, because otherwise even they might come up this time of the year, and of course we're trying to fish on or near the bottom. So I'm now just going to whiz out 2 more balls on that short line, and then also on that longer line, I'm going to put a couple of balls there as well. So a couple of balls on this, and I can actually get 2 balls. Don't forget, a bit uneven shape so that they don't, a few maggots in there as well, won't hurt. 2 balls in that cup, just on that line, drop them in, uneven so that they don't roll down the shelf. Just something for them bigger fish to get their teeth into. See the little bubbles and bits and pieces, fizzies that are coming off the water. That longer line, I'm going to do the same again there. Put a couple there. I don't know whether the fish are going to come there even, but it doesn't matter. A good idea is to keep it topped up. So a couple of balls there as well on that longer line, so that you know at least something's getting to the bottom. And they do love this ground bait. Obviously this ground bait mix is working. It's actually getting the fish grubbing round on the bottom. So 2 out there as well. Doesn't take long to do it, but you know it's going to get to the bottom without being intercepted by the silverfish. And keep your line, remember where you're fishing. Keep your marker going, the same. Just put this in, 2 balls, bump, bump, and a few maggots. Another big fish. It's really hotting up now. They've obviously moved on to that ground bait. And even though I'm still feeding out and catching fish short, but that feeding out, you know, it acts as a sort of a drawing stroke holding area. You know, the fish will come to that longer line and then gradually work their way up the shelf. So keep feeding it, don't worry about it. These fish are really strange. I don't know what they are. This is probably a good tench, I think. Probably a good tench. Just needs one section on. What happens is that obviously your elastic is stretching. You need to compensate for that when you're landing your fish. So you can leave an extra joint on to land. This fish is really flying now. Tell you what, these fish do fight you. This is a good tench, I should think. But this gear, for big carp, it will handle them, but for tench, it shouldn't be any problem. You'd land tench quite easily with this. Yeah, lovely, look at that. Lovely green golden, gorgeous fish. Maggots out of its mouth, 2 red maggots, but the big fish have obviously now moved in. Silverfish first, just going exactly to plan. Silverfish first, and these really are difficult fish to hold on to. But they are beautiful, goldeny green, perfect condition, only about 1.5 pounds, but really you saw how hard it fought, really hard fighting fish. There's loads more out there yet. Oh dear, don't know what I'm going to catch next here. This is a I don't know fish. Reasonable size, I think. It might be a big roach, it might be a bream, and I don't know. Oh, it's a bream. Still a nice fish. We're catching everything today. It's a skimmer actually. It's just under £1 pound. I'd class that as a skimmer. Not because it skims across the water, but that's what it is. It's incredible. Just a complete mixture of fish, but everything's coming on that ground bait. Obviously they like it. That's on the bottom. Lovely, look at that beautiful fish. Only just under £1 pound, but look, lovely silver, beautiful bright silver. Really healthy fish. Just hooked inside the mouth. That's no problem. Look at that. A little beauty. I'll put that in the silverfish net because it's a bit small to be mixing with that big carp. Say small, I mean it's nearly £1 pound, so it's a good fish. Another big fish. I think after this one, this feels like a carp, I think I'm going to have to change over to that heavier rig because this one is really going. But I'm still in control of the fish. It's still there. The elastic is doing exactly what it should do. That ground bait is really working well, cupping those extra 2 balls in, and these bigger fish have come straight back on it again. Remember, it's a mixture of silly bait, which is a fish meal ground bait, and this new secret bait that I'm working on at the moment. The new Clubman range from Van der Nine, it's a new carp one. Now what I'm doing is I'm letting this fish run, just tiring it out, try not to do too much. But that elastic, that is really stretching some. That is a tremendous distance out there. It's a lovely fish, and what I'm going to have to do with this one, compensate for the elastic, I'm going to have to put more sections on. I'm just letting the fish take it, letting it run. Remember, this is, although I'm catching fish, it's still it's not summer, so it's quite difficult. So that's why I'm using the small hook, getting the fish, lightish elastic. It's a number 6, this one, hydro elastic. Equivalent to about a number 6, but boy, does that stretch. This feels like a really good fish. I'm giving it some pressure too. Really giving it some stick. What could be more enjoyable than this? Now try and guess the length of that elastic. That is really going some. I'm pulling the fish, I'm actually letting it play, pulling it. It's trying to get away. I know I've actually stopped the fish on its main run. That's the most important thing. Shipper joint on. Big swirling out in the water. Big, massive swirl there was. Sure, this one's going to tire me out as well. I think it's definitely time for that heavier rig after this one comes in. what we can do, we can try the heavier rig. If it doesn't work, go back onto a lighter rig again. It's really flying round. What is it? Is it as big as the last one? I don't think it is somehow, but it's still a good fish. Do you know what? It's a big tench. It's led me a right merry dance, and I thought it must be a carp. But look at that, a beautiful, really is a cracking tench that, and did that go? Did that fight? Beautiful fish. Well, I would never have believed that that was a tench. The way that was fighting. To me, it was just like a big carp. That was an incredible fight from that fish. Probably 2.5 to 3 pounds. Hooked perfectly in the lip. Just hooked. Right in the little bone, well, if there is a bony bit, but it's quite difficult to get out, even though I'm on barbless hook. There. How about that? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tench. Gorgeous fish. All solid, solid muscle. Terrific fish. Hey, this session's going great. I knew I should have put that heavier rig on. I'm straight into it. But when it was a tench, I thought, oh, well, I'll handle tench easy on this rig. Now I'm out again. And the elastic's flown out and I'm into another big fish. This really is a fantastic fishery. I mean, this time of year to come and catch fish like this. And I will have to say the bait also is very good. I managed to have it given to me. Alan Lane, whose father was a very, very famous, well, one of the most famous anglers probably in the world, Billy Lane. Alan Lane's his son. He's got a tackle shop and a maggot farm in Coventry, and he's given me, very kindly given me some beautiful maggots, and they are big maggots and casters to fish with today. It's another good fish. This will be a tench though, so this rig is perfect for tench, but not so good for, you know, if I hook a big carp it won't be as good. But perfect for these tench, just nice. They're taking the bait, smallish hook, whizzing round. Look, another lovely tench. Look at that, beautiful fish. That is really going some. Mind you, I'm giving it some stick as well. I was trying to get under me keep net. Whizzing along the bank now. Yes, another good tench. This rig is obviously brilliant for tench. I mean, it's perfect, but the elastic is a bit light. So what I'm going to do is going to put that heavier rig on. I'll show you what it's like. I'm going to put the heavier rig on and have a real go for the carp, because it's another lovely tench, probably bigger than the last one. That is a real beauty. They said this was a good tench water, and oh, it's how right they are. It's a great tench. Another one well over 2 pound, 2.5 pound. Fabulous looking fish. Perfect. Fin perfect. Beautiful and full, all muscle, hard fighting. Great fish. Now's the time to try this heavier rig, but I'll just explain a little bit about it to you first. I've got a much heavier hook. I've got a 14 Drennan Super Spade, and that really is a strong hook. 6 pound hook length, which is like an 0.15mm diameter. Still, I've got that 10-inch long hook length and a 4-turn water knot to connect that to the main line. The main line is 7 pound. That's an 0.16mm diameter. I've got 3 number 10 shots there, spaced out, equally spaced, and then the float I've got is 3/4 gram, so the Olivet actually is 0.7 of a gram. Same Olivet as I always use. It's a Drennan pole master with 2 little tags clipped in position, and that's quite, I've got that well away from the hook, just to get the fish chance to see the bait as it drops through that last little bit. And then the float itself, same float, got the same float on, different size. This one is 3/4 gram quad float. Perfect for this sort of fishing. Same wire stem. It's got a normal plastic bristle, change it if I want, but I've got black in because I've got a white surface. Looking at a white surface, that's good. And I've stepped up the elastic. I've got a number 12 high vis Preston Innovation elastic, but it's a lot tougher than I've been using. It's got a big connector on there, big carp connector, and it's attached just with a normal loop. And remember, you need to do an overhand loop on this. It's always difficult, but with high-tech lines you have to be very, very careful with the type of knots that you're using. So that elastic is running actually through 3 sections there. These top 2 long 2 sections, which is normally like a top 3, but a fair way, so that the fish can run a good distance. But that elastic is very, very powerful. Now what I've decided to do is, I've tried that heavy rig, the carp are not there yet and it's too heavy for the roach and the tench. So I've recupped in again and I'm going to pick that light rig up and just try that out and see. There's plenty of indications when you're on the heavier rig, but nothing takes it. I did say earlier on that, you know, this time of year the fish don't go mad, you know. Sometimes, that's why I set up 4 rigs. Sometimes you might have to be on a light rig. If there's loads of fish moving, you can then put the heavy rig on. But the sort of the ideal, the rig that's working today is on this 6.5 metre line with 2 maggots on the hook and this 18 small hook and 012 bottom. So, you know, fish are not silly. They sometimes realise that there's things that are not quite right, and unless they're very, very aggressive, that's when you can use your heavy gear, or when you've got big baits on. But today is not a big bait day. Although it's sunny, although it's very warm out here, the water temperature is still quite low, and this makes a difference to the amount of fish you can catch. So I'm going back on that 2 maggots, one or 2 silverfish moving in now, which generally means, we had them to start with, then they went, generally means that there's no big fish about, but then suddenly it can go quiet and you know you've got 1 or 2 big fish in your peg. So I'm dropping that right on top of where I've cupped that feed in. And just try and get a bit more action going. The thing to do when you're fishing is all the time chop and change. If things are not working and you're not catching, go back to what, start with bites. And immediately the float moved then. As I dropped it in, the float sort of dibbed under, and I only just cupped 2 big pieces of ground bait in there, 2 fairly hard balls in there, and straight away there's fish round that ground bait. Oh dear. As soon as I change back to this light rig, then I go and hook a carp. Now this one is really going. I'm saying it's a carp unless it's a really big tench. I've got to put some sections on. That is really going some. Now you can see how that elastic works. I'm not so sure that I'm going to get this fish in, you know. I've now got all the sections of my pole, look at that, on, and I'm hanging on for grim death. Isn't it just the way, eh? Just changed over from the heavy rig back to the light rig, and I go and hook a big carp. And this is a proper one. If I land it, shall we finish on this one? Yeah, I think so. I think by the time I land this one, this is where this elastic though works. If I'd have been on normal elastic, I'd have lost this fish. Let's bring it in. I know one thing, the way it roared off, I'm probably going to have to put some more sections on in a minute. Again. Look at that. They really fight well. Look at that elastic coming out. Can't even still under the water. This is a good fish. There are some terrific fish in here. Just trying to control it, trying to stop the fish, hold it, bring it round, bring it back. Not put too much pressure on it, because remember, this is a rig with that 012 line. Only just over 2 pound breaking strain. Floats out of the water now, at least I can see the float. That is going some, that fish. It doesn't like being hooked. This is the advantage with this elastic though, it will stretch, it will keep stretching and enable you to get these fish in. Takes a bit of time, but it doesn't matter. Remember, when you're pleasure fishing, you want to land a fish, don't you? You don't want really tight elastic that your hook length breaks immediately the fish take off, and you get great fun, you know. You actually feel, I can feel that fish thumping on the pole. Ooh. It's got it swimming in circles now, which is good. Putting more and more pressure on it as it swims round. Just getting him in a little bit closer now. I think if we land this one, this will be a great fish to finish up on, because to be truthful, I'm exhausted. What a lovely fish. Let's just take that hook out and show it to camera. What a terrific fish. Look at that, just beautiful, all solid muscle, and what a fight. I mean, I know I wouldn't have been able to get that out without that light elastic, that soft elastic, but with the light gear I had, I'm sure that would have broken me, and I've never seen or had a common carp that's fought that hard. I honestly thought perhaps it was foul hooked, but it wasn't. Look, a beautiful fish, absolutely perfect, scale perfect, fin perfect. About 6 pound, but a wonderful fish and a lovely one to finish on. What a terrific net of fish. Probably almost 25 pound of fish there. There's tench, carp and bream, even a big bream in amongst that lot. But as I said earlier, you never know what line is the one that's going to take up, and today it was the 6.5 metre, the closing up the shelf line that produced all the goods with the light rig. Funnily enough, they didn't want the heavy rig either. So with fishing, all the time you have to chop and change, but remember, get some feed down so the carp go down, loose feed to draw fish in, and what a fabulous net of fish. Really am pleased. Lovely net of fish. I'll slip them back now. What a really enjoyable day.